Okay, so we're continuing a string of thought here in regards to our practices, or our practice and the postures that we're working on. So we're coming out of the walking Qigong, rocking Qigong. Last week we revisited a primary set, which are beginning steps. We talked about 4 movements that can help you get into the Qigong state. There's Dennis. So just to review those movements, they come from the primary set. They're balancing. They should be relaxing. They're very simple. 1 is expelling the qi. 2 is pouring in the qi into the bai hui. I forget the name of the next 2. Forward pressing, and then side pressing. So just those 2. Talking about those 2, just to help to get into the Qigong state. Then we also talked about doing some hip work. We also talked about doing some of the stretching and the hip mobility that's required for snake creeps down and for other stances that might need some work. So we talked about that mindset and the state in which we want to go into doing our work, where we're expanding and exploring our range of motion. We're continuing with that thought today. Yes, question?
Yeah, what about the one that we do like this? You did this one?
Yeah,
I mean,
we did 1.
Oh, that was
We
that
did 1.
Okay.
We
Sorry.
did 2. That's okay. 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. So those 4. Okay. Today we're moving on. I don't want to say moving on, but we're progressing with this movement in mind, in the sense that it is a large coil. In my email today, I shared a video with you about coiling, small hand and arm wrist coiling. I shared that with you. I also shared the Embrace Tiger and Return to the Mountain video. Embrace a Tiger and Return to the Mountain video, which is also connected to this initial primary set movement. Okay. Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain does this dropping and then in. So we're going to look at that as well. All coming from these 4 movements. Let's get started. Let's do a little bit of shaking first. The hands, the fingers, the wrists, just kind of use your mind and your focus and attention to track through these areas. So again, fingers, wrists, elbows, shoulders. Feel the joints loosening up. Now add the whole body with a bounce in the knees. Now a little bit of side rotation as you bounce. Pretty much one hip, one side to the other. Yeah. And just allow a little bit of looseness, space, openness to come into the joints and into the connective tissues around the joints. Okay? Good. Don't forget to breathe. Now let's do a little bit of twisting. Watch the chairs or cabinets around you. Don't want to hit your hand on something that's hard. So I'm thinking we're going to start the sessions with these 2 movements, at least these 2 movements. for the simple fact that they are foundational. All right, so it's important, this movement, swinging the arms. The important thing I want to draw your attention to is the rotation that happens around the hip, lower torso area. Feeling that rotation coming from the feet. Feeling your feet connected to the ground and feeling the energy. Feeling the energy that is associated with the torque that is coming from your feet in contact with the ground. And feeling that torque and feeling that twist and movement coming through your center of mass, center of gravity, the hips and lower torso area, and into the spine, and into the shoulders, and finally into the wrists and hands and fingers. So in that, we feel this full body movement where the movement is beginning in the feet and ending in the fingers. So we want to become really acclimated to that sense of feeling. Okay, let's just slow it down. Couple of deep breaths here. That was a lot of movement. So just now start to feel the stillness. I'd like you to connect to your breath, connect to deep abdominal breathing. Try to begin that deep breathing pace for yourself that's comfortable, that you can sustain throughout the whole session. Okay, and relax the body to gravity, slightly bend the knees. Relax the spine, close the spine. Engage the hands. Exhale and inhale. Pushing into the earth, opening legs, opening spine, lifting hands. Exhale, stretching the hands up, out, over, and down. Again, bend the knees, close the spine. Begin to inhale, rising up. Opening. Exhaling, out, over, and down. Bending knees, closing spine. Extending arms, inhaling again. Open spine, open chest. Breathe comfortably, naturally. Settle into your own pace that's natural and comfortable. Feel yourself comfortably transitioning from inhalation to exhalation as you lift the arms, circling up and out, and circling out and down. Feel the calmness and relaxation that comes from harmonizing the movement with your breath. And change directions. It's important here to internalize your attention, internalize your focus, to really observe your own body. Okay, make this one your last repetition. And bring the hands to the side, relaxing arms, relaxing shoulders. We're going to go to the next movement. Stay with your breathing, keeping that pace going. We're going to do same thing that we did to begin the first movement. On your exhale, relax the legs and knees to gravity, relax the spine closing. You're going to inhale, pushing into the earth, opening spine, lifting hands. And pushing forward, pushing out. Exhaling here. In this one, the fingers are facing vertical. Inhaling, coming back. Down. Exhaling. Find your own rhythm and pace. Inhaling up. Exhaling out, fingers leading. Settling the wrist at the end. Inhaling back. Exhaling down. Remember to get the legs involved, get the spine involved, whole body, bending the knees, sinking, rising, inhaling, sinking again as you push out. You can think rising, inhaling, exhaling, descending, sinking. Remember we talked about Taiji hand form as well? Where the thumb is slightly in, pinky slightly back as well. See if you can incorporate that. Make this one your last repetition. And we're going to go to the side now. Involve the legs, relax the spine, sinking, inhaling, lifting hands. And rising. Hands to the side, dropping elbows, leading with the fingers, pushing, pressing out, and sinking down. Exhaling. Inhaling back, rising. Exhaling down. Bend the knees, sink the weight here in preparation. Inhaling, lifting hands. Exhaling, pushing up. A little bit of mind regulation here now as you continue. So when you lift the hands, now try to imagine you're pushing yourself against two walls, pushing away two large walls. Helps to give your mind something to focus on. So as you push your hands out to the side, imagine that you're pushing away two large walls. Make this one your last repetition. Relax the arms, hands to the side. Check in with your posture. Feel your spine erect, lifting head to the sky, slightly tucking the chin in. Feel the feet connected to the ground. Feel the sky above you, connected to the Bai Hui, crown. And then feel yourself in between. Three powers, heaven, man, and earth. Get a sense of these three major powers, these three major energies. Take a deep breath, inhale. Find your breath. And let's just do a little bit of hamstring and lower back stretching here. Careful of the lower back. We're just going to stretch down. Just a little hanging of the shoulders, hanging of the head, hanging of the arms, feeling the lower back and feeling the hamstrings and whatever else may want to expand. Good. And slowly come up, bend your knees, drop your hips to help facilitate. Slowly rolling up the spine. Inhaling. Exhaling. Okay. We're going to move on to the next segment of the session. Any questions so far? Doesn't appear so. Okay. Everybody thumbs up. Good. So as mentioned, the previous, or in the email, I shared with you the hand coiling exercise. Hand coiling exercise. Remember that external, outside, going to the outside, we refer to this as a yang coil, in contrast to inside, yin coil. Yin coil. And so my question to you is, how is this movement, this coil, connected to this movement? Expelling the qi, right? In terms of Tai Chi principle, in terms of Tai Chi pattern, how is this movement connected to this movement? And what would you say their relationship is? Anybody have any thoughts or insights about that at all?
Well, I was wondering if you wanted us to really answer or not, but what I was thinking was that the arm coil and the large arm circles are both either, well, they're moving energy, and the yang one is moving it away or in a yang direction, and the yin is moving it in an inward direction in both cases. And it's possible to combine the arm circles with the arm twist, with the arm coil rather. So that's a couple of ways they're related that I can think of.
Right. Okay. So you're saying you can do the coil and the arm circle kind of at the same time, is what you're saying, it seems.
Yep.
Okay, cool. That sounds fun. That would be something to
It sort of
explore.
naturally does that anyway. If you know, your arms are facing one way and then they turn and face the other way when you're coming down.
Yeah.
You know, so you can just like incorporate that coil
Right.
with that.
Right. Yeah, let's refer to the patterns that we usually are referencing, right? The yin yang pattern, we're all familiar with that. And the Taiji pattern, which is more of a spiral pattern, and Wu Ji. So let's look at the spiral. Right, we know the spiral pattern. But what do we need to remind ourselves about the spiral pattern? If I go like this, what does it look like? Right, doesn't look like anything, Javi. Right, I know. Yes, I agree. But when we look at spiral, we always have to remember that it's three-dimensional. Right? That's what spiral does, right? So that's the side view, right? Here's what I just showed you, the lower view. It's not really, it doesn't show that way, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so the Tai Chi pattern, the spiral pattern, is three-dimensional. Okay, so these movements, these two movements are connected in this way. So I'm standing, and the spiral pattern for these are going in this way. All right. Insofar as, so let me do that. Insofar as the large circles are the large pattern, and eventually you get to the small hand coils with the other exercise. So the expelling the chi and the small hand coil are connected in this way. They're connected in that they both are they're both at one ends of the spectrum of the spiral. Is that conveying? Can you see that? I know the marker's not quite bright, but is that conveying? And do we understand where I'm at? So the two exercises, I asked you what the connection to the two exercises were. One was the large hand coil, hand circle, and the other was the small hand circle. They're connected in that each of them lies at one end of the spectrum. The one hand coil over here, large arm circling over here. However, we have all of this space that we need to explore. You with me? Thoughts?
I think I might not be totally with you, but maybe I once we do it, I'll get it. I'm still not quite getting the connection between the large and the small hand coils.
Okay.
But
All right. So that no problem, because anyone else? How about anyone else?
Avi,
Yep.
I think the coil is pretty much the same. The only difference is in one instance you're extending the arms, in the other instance you're extending them up and out and about, and in the other you're just extending them forward in a smaller coil. But I think essentially the movement of the arms is still the same basic coil, I think. And also I think what you're getting at too with the 3 dimensions is it's more of a vortex than a coil.
Yeah. When we it might also, thanks Dennis, that's the direction I'm going in. So yeah, thank you. I think it also might be confusing when we have both hands going as well, right? For the general movement of the pattern, for the sake of the pattern, we're going, and this is the demo, right? This is the demo. I had the board and my side dummy with the coils and the circles, but now it's how do I get from this movement to this movement, right? So first I'm going to go from this movement to the other movement. And so see if you can see the spiral and the coil. Right? So here's our first movement, expelling the chi. Here's going to be our next movement, arm coiling. I'm just going to change direction to make it fun. Now I'm going yin. Now I'm doing pouring in the chi. And now I'm going to go back to extending the arms out, as Dennis mentioned, in front of myself. Changing directions just to make it fun. So do you see how I'm exploring the, as Dennis said, the vortex, or I'm exploring the spiral from yes, this is out, but in a way it's in to out this way.
Yeah, the
And so
vortex
we're just
occurs in the transition.
in transition.
Yeah.
Right. So it's with the pattern. The pattern is one thing. You know, the application is another. And then the feeling and the sense is one other thing as well. Right? And so that's what we're doing with the movements. Taking the pattern and putting it into the body and feeling the senses and sensations based on these 2 movements that we are doing right now. Expelling the chi and small hand coiling, double hand coiling. So theory, pattern, movement, and posture, and then into the body and getting whatever senses and feelings come from those 2 movements and exploring the range from one movement to the other. And nodding her head. You with me now? Yeah. So we're exploring the vortex, as Dennis mentioned, exploring the vortex, exploring the spiral. That's what we're going to be exploring with these two movements. Thoughts, questions?
I can't quite remember the small hand spiral. I sort of forget how to do it.
Okay. And Margaret? Margaret says thumbs up. Excellent question, Anne. What I would say is revisit the spiral, right? That's the pattern that you're trying to replicate in your arms. So it's not really about how to do it per se, but how does the pattern flow through you from one movement to the other movement. So you would say, well, yeah, still, but how do I do it? Well, okay, great. You have you have one end of the spectrum, you have the other end of the spectrum, and you can go from one side to the other, one side to the other. And you explore the feeling and the sensation going this way in or going that way out.
This is all very neat. I like what you're saying. Very philosophical too. But you know, one thing that's kind of nagging me is that this is how much I don't get things. But like I'm kind of a dullard but you see, when we do this movement, it seems like a circle and not a spiral. So I'm obviously missing. I'm missing something.
Well, what is a spiral and what is a circle if it's not just a bunch of connected circles?
Yeah, right. Yes. But when I'm doing this, it's the same size all the time. I'm not getting
I'm with you.
Yeah, right.
I'm with you. And that's exactly why we're doing this. Because this movement, a lot of times we get fixated in our minds about something is one thing and it can't be other things. So the question that you want to ask yourself is, why is this circle not a spiral? And if it was connected to a spiral, how would it look? And if I were drawing that spiral with my arms, how would my arms manifest the movement to eventually finish in this way? So those are great questions. And those are the questions that you're asking yourself as you're moving from one movement to the next movement. Maybe Dennis has a little bit more grasp on it. Can you offer some insight?
I think that what you might be missing is that as you're raising your arms and bringing them around, you're actually turning your wrists and hands at the same time. And that's where the coil comes in.
Yes, and Margaret mentioned that too, turning them. Margaret, you said that, turning the wrists.
That's
yes.
where the coil is.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's fair. Absolutely. Yeah. You know what? And that's great. So typically we're doing the movement. Typically we're doing the movement this way, palms up and then palms out. So I guess there is that coil. There might be that coil already inherent. Then there's also the movement of, well, what if I just lead with my elbows and relax my hands, wrists, and fingers? There's also that question as well. And so the questions of how eventually become answered by you. And how am I doing this, or how is this movement manifesting? And all those insights are going to be all valid and great and fair. you're going to do the coil consciously, maybe here in the large circles, whereas someone else might just, oh yeah, say, oh yeah, I'm actually doing a coil already, which I'm not even aware of. You know, that may be the case as well. So we're beginning the movement, the large movement, and we want to discover and figure out, how do I get from this end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum? So that's all I'm asking you to explore, is taking this, making it smaller, and drawing that spiral and taking that course to eventually have the arms and hands in front of you. Once you get to that end of the spectrum there, the small circles, then you start to draw it back, bring it in, make the circles larger as the spiral progresses, eventually to the large circles. So now I'm in, let's just call this in, as I'm in and I'm big, and then I'll start to make my way out and get smaller. Starting to make my way out. And get smaller. You can track the spiral with your elbows. You can track the spiral with your fingertips. You can track the spiral with your wrists. Whatever you feel most comfortable with. Now, for the most part, I'm not really doing any much manipulation other than in the shoulders and the elbows. Shoulders and the elbows, because I really want to also keep my arms, fingers, tissues relaxed for the most part. Also, we got to keep in mind the torso involvement in the spine bow and in the chest bow. So how are those involved in the spiral? And it might be difficult to incorporate the breathing because you've got your mind quite involved. As much as you can, try to remind yourself to breathe with the movements. Great. So you've gotten a chance to try it out. You went from in and big to out and small. You've done the circles. You've done the spirals, right? What do you think? Any thoughts now connecting pattern to body movement, connecting two postures to one another, and feeling the movement in the joints, the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists? What's on your mind, Anne?
Well, I really like the when I focus on my leading with my elbows, because it for me it makes everything more integrated, and it encourages me to involve the spine. So it all begins to, if I lead with my elbows, then suddenly my shoulders get involved, and then my whole spine gets involved. And I can leave my hands and wrists, they're just following along. I'm not even thinking about my hands and wrists.
Great. Okay. And do you feel you were able to connect the circles to a large spiral?
Yeah, much more. And I do get confused because I'm crossing the hands when I'm doing that big circle. And as I try to get
Mhm.
smaller, I have a hard time not crossing my hands. I have a hard, yeah, so I'm not sure what to do with that.
Right. Eventually it gets out to, so you're here, eventually it gets out to the point where if you use your fingertip, you're essentially there.
Oh,
Right. In theory. In theory. Right? Because the question would be, well, where's the very tip of the spiral? Where does it finish? And, that's kind of up to you. It's like, how are you embodying the pattern? So, like in this case, based on what you're saying, okay, I would say, well, if you're embodying the pattern all the way to the end, maybe that in theory it finishes at the fingertip, I would say, right? Maybe. It's not absolute. It's like where you put your attention and your focus on, in a way. Yeah.
but it
So
seems
it's just kind of, go ahead. Yeah.
you go from the big circle or the big spiral, and as you get smaller and smaller, all these movements like leading with the elbow, it all becomes less and less, and it begins to feel like sort of an internal, like an internal spiral. Not much is happening externally. It feels like something's happening internally. Does that make any sense?
I think it makes
Dennis has
perfect
something to say.
sense because actually most of your body movements are actually a spiral, an internal spiral. It's your fascia muscles moving within the fascia and spiraling out. That's how your body works.
Is that what you were speaking about, Anne, you think?
I think I'm making some connections. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't totally disagree with that. Yeah. I mean, I would also say though, does movement continue well, I guess you would need to define movement, and then you would say, well, does movement continue when you stop moving your body or when your body is resting? Is there movement? Right? So in
Yes.
that way you would need to right. Do you need to
Yes. That question is kind of where I'm going with as soon as I stop the big movements and start getting smaller, you don't see as much movement physically, but yet it feels like there's movement happening internally.
Mhm. Yeah, right, right, right,
But then that's kind
right.
of what you were
I
saying,
think
Dennis. Dennis, you're kind of addressing that too by saying that's how your muscles and your fascia, it's moving internally.
well, yeah, the way that I think, and Dennis can elaborate more, but I think what he's saying is that in the natural way that the body is formed, that the extremities are formed, um, it exhibits that of a spiral in the way that the tissues are shaped and formed in the natural body. So I think there's that aspect, is what he's saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in terms of doing the movements and the postures, I would also say, well, there's definitely movement happening simply by, holding the hand out, right? You've got engagement, you've got shoulder engagement, you've got maybe lower back engagement. How much are you relaxing or flexing the wrist, right? Or the finger or fingers, right? So it's more of a static posture in a way. But once you ask your tissues to start doing that of a spiral, I would say, yeah, there's definitely a lot going on. And the question is, well, where does the spiral like kind of end? Where does it begin? If we visit the theory, our spiral ends, well, obviously it's going to end at the fingertip, yes. So where would be its origin? And we kind of spoke to this at the beginning of the class where we were looking at those initial movements, those foundational movements. And if we visit the classics say, well, movement originates in the feet. So that means our coil and our spiral needs to originate in the feet. So look down at your feet and just track it. Track it to the fingertips. And say, okay, spiral. Show yourself. Okay.
Well,
Dennis,
Patty,
Dennis, yeah.
that happens when you get the legs involved. When
Right.
you start, using your legs as part of the movement, then you're getting your feet and your legs involved in the movement in it, and it can originate there. And then, as I say, from there it's driven from the waist and then out to the extremities.
Mhm.
Good. Sounds great. Margaret?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to sign off now. So
No problem.
I'll see you on Friday. Thank you very much. I love spirals.
Yeah,
Coils.
yeah, yeah.
Bye, Dennis. Bye, Ann. Bye,
Okay. Bye, Margaret.
Norio. Bye. Thank you.
Okay. I've got one more just small demo to show you, and then we'll close this session off. So, Dennis, I totally agree with you. You're absolutely right. Getting the legs involved is going to set us up and create the conditions so that we can facilitate our movements originating in the feet. That's what we desire, right? So now let me show you. Let's see, we were doing, this movement, all right? So let's say I put one foot forward. I just drop one hand. I'm putting my same hand, same foot forward, putting the other hand on the abdomen. And now I want to do the same small circle spiral with my hand that's extended, okay? So I want to start doing the spirals. Where am I originating my movement? Where is the movement originating from? So I'll show you, I'll try to get closer so I can show you, and I'll exaggerate. Actually, I'm going to exaggerate it. I might speak to you a bit more if I exaggerate. So there's my large circles. And then now I'm going to spiral from big to small. Now I'm gonna change directions and I'm gonna go from small and then go back to large. Notice my other hand. Notice my abdomen. Notice my hips and my torso. And then my legs. Right? So there you saw, you might have seen a lot of abdominal movement. So we can break this up into 4 directions. We'll continue this next week. We can break this up into 4 directions. So the circle is comprised of, side to side and up and down movement, right? So what gives me my side to side movement? Torso, right? What gives me my vertical movement? Well, I've got my legs, and then I've got my spine, right? So now it's a question of coordinating all of those mechanisms to create the spiral. Yeah. And then with those, we're able to embody Tai Chi. If Tai Chi is a spiral and we're able to do spiraling movement, then we can embody Tai Chi.
And that was almost